Welcome back to Krown's Crypto Cave, and it's a new week of opportunity, my dear friends, as we get started for a nice little Monday morning over here from actually a little bit of an overcast Helsinki, Finland. Nice and good for me because I don't like sweating, so all this hot weather can go fuck itself. But there's plenty to talk about as far as the open goes for this week as we get into our first day of real trading. Now, with all of that said, the lower term time frame is still going to actually take precedence in this in this particular video. However, that's not to say that the higher term time frames are not important. Just all of the high term time frame analysis is still more or less the same that we've been looking at from the past couple days. So if you do want to reference that more in depth, definitely go check out yesterday's video. However, I'll just kind of allude to it today, perhaps. On top of that, I should also say that yes, if you're in the TA program or the Neophyte program, you will notice that there's a new video. It's going to be in the risk management section or right after the risk management section. And then if you're in the TA program, there's actually two new videos. There's another one on top of that. It's going to be in the bonus section. They're uploading right now. They may or may not be fully processed. And once they get fully processed, then there's going to be like a little period of time, just like YouTube, where it has to process into high definition. So keep that in mind, but by the time that I post this video, should be all well and good. And apologies for the false alarm yesterday, because it still did take like another, I don't know, half day, I suppose. Anyways, plenty to talk about as far as price action goes here on the Krown chain application. I should also say I might be on Twitch today, actually. I'm not so sure just yet. Need to run a few errands, but depending upon how fast I can eat this massive chicken that I have resting in the fridge, that will dictate that will dictate my pacing of today. I will be on my gaming channel as well for anyone who is interested in hanging out there. The link's in the comment section below. Total Krown is the channel name, but of course, if you're not interested in strategy gaming or especially Total War, then it's probably not a good fit. But if you are, then it is a really good fit, actually. Anyways, looking at the Krown chain application over here, which can be found at app.krownchain.net and is 100% free, we do see that open interest really spiking up towards the upper end of that interesting area that we've been kind of postulating for this past week and a half, 2 weeks now, working its way perhaps even out of the 1.5 billion to 1.7 billion range, again, as Bitcoin kind of approaches the top side of the short-term, medium-term, and now what could lead into a long-term range as well. So I really want to see the next breakage of the critical levels on the higher term timeframes, plus a move above 1.7, maybe 1.7.5 billion, or a move a culling of it down below 1.5 billion. That, alongside a break of the long-term range, would really put a lot of emphasis on this next major move, which I do believe is likely to happen probably sooner rather than later, to be honest with you, probably this week. BULLAHS once again have the balls in their courts, and BULLAH balls means, well, fun times perhaps ahead. Anyways, as far as the other ones go, more or less the same. Still really not seeing anything different there. Fear and greed index just oscillating within a one range right there, as you can see, going from 54 to 53. Can't make too much off of that, but it is interesting to me nonetheless, because we do see that the market is not necessarily in the greedy zone, or certainly not in like the very greedy zone, which is considered above like an 80 read, where the market typically does put in its more parabolic, exuberant tops as Bitcoin does approach this high term time frame range. High term time frame range, not to be confused with the macro range, of which that's still 11,500. So let's go look at some price action charts right here, get out of all that ephemeral stuff and talk about some nitty gritty shit. And what do we see thus far? Bitcoin did close the weekly on a higher high, actually. Pretty damn good. I'm sure that all of the dildo traders are saying this is a shooting star dildo and we're going all the way to the fucking floor. You could say that, yes, but it is not confirmed as one until we actually take out the low side of this. And then, yes, I would be looking for a continuation move down to 8,700-ish region, maybe 8,800, something like that, play out the low side of the range. But for right now, this actually looks good to me. And if you are, by the way, if you are in the TA program, the newest video is going to directly reference this concept, but I would be looking for a backfill on this on last week's weekly dildo. That is, by the way, open at 94.50. Oh, funny how that works out, which is still our low-term time frame range. Maybe we can move it up to 9,500 today. I haven't really checked in the low-term time frames just yet. But as far as as far as moving averages go, we officially have the 10 simple above the 21, above the 55, above the 89, all above the 200s right there. So we have all lower periods above higher periods, which you intuitively know is essentially saying that the trend is strengthening to the upside. It has been tested once, twice, and you could even say that that this last one right in over here as a 10 symbol works its way above all is another attempt. And more importantly, they're all starting to get divergence away from each other, again, suggesting that the trend is strengthening to the upside. And realistically, that's kind of like your picture perfect test, to be fair. Coming off the 21 and the 55 right here, that's the yellow and the 55, or sorry, the yellow and the green respectively. And works both to the upside and the downside. We had a bearish cross right here, a bullish cross right here. This one not super perfect, not kind of testing it down into it, but still giving you about a 2x actually after that. After that next test down to the 10 simple, this one over here giving you about a 50-60% move to the downside. And we can go back to 2014, 2015 as well, of which there are several examples. But like I said, though, won't spend too much time on the higher term time frame today, just because that was covered in depth yesterday and still the same. But just kind of following up from it, yes, we do see what we kind of I don't want to say expected. Expectations, terrible word. But what we were looking for yesterday to kind of still gear the odds in the favor of the BULLAHS here, as they are again closer to winning that long-term next range in the way that I look at it. So going back right in over here, this is the range that we were looking at yesterday. Blue box of peace and prosperity to the upside. I would look at this as both an aggressive read right here and a conservative read right here, whichever one gets broken first on a 4-hour closure is very likely to lead us to that next move to test around 10.5. The reason why that's even more interesting than that, though, which by the way, 10.5 our last high on a weekly closing basis, right around here early February. But the reason why this is more important, the reason why this is even more interesting to the upside right here is because if Bitcoin does break to the upside, I would look at this as an ascending triangle being resolved to the upside, which can have a measure move as well. And proverbially speaking, it would suggest a move towards about 11,000 to 11,100. So that would obviously include or imply a move not just to test 10,500, our last prior high on the weekly right here once again, but actually make a new higher high on top of that, which from a weekly perspective would actually initiate that next move up to 11,500, as that is the macro area. Volume profile is probably the best way to be getting this one, of which you do see that, well, we're very far ahead of the point of control, obviously, but that's not really relevant to what we're talking about right now. What's more important is that relative to where Bitcoin price action is right now, we are kind of on the precipice of that last high value node, respectively speaking. It's obviously not very high value if you compare it to what we were doing even just like a few months ago, but relative to the current price action, it would imply new changes in behavior for the weekly time frame, of which we see very little stop in Bitcoin from that 11,500 region afterwards. That's also going to be one of the gaps present on CMEs right on over here, which is still very much valid at 11,500 to 11,800. So there will be a premium associated with it, of course. But if we go back to our weekly look right on over here, and you see both from a volume profile standpoint, both from a gap analysis standpoint, and also just from an institutional order flow dynamic standpoint, which is just a fancy word for saying that big players have been getting their short fills in this area for the last 2.5 years, and to move back above that region after so many wicks above and after so many rejections on a macro scale, which for Bitcoin would be a weekly, would be a major macro change of behavior. And we could really talk about targets into the deep teens, maybe even 20,000 again, and that's where I just feel like I've turned into the fucking moon boys. Anyways, it doesn't mean that you can't make money on the downside as well. There will be ebbs and flows in this market, and some pretty nasty ones at that. We've all seen 30 to 40% downwards moves in Bitcoin bull marks before. You could also relate that word to a crash maybe, but you get my point. Anyways, so that's still the major area, and that's about it that I'll kind of talk about for the higher term timeframes right now. Let's go back down to the lower term timeframe. So again, that's why I'm keeping an intentful eye on that next blue box of peace and prosperity to the upside, which is a lot more closer than even our short term downside area that we were speaking about yesterday. But just kind of round out this idea a little bit more. Not only would I look at this as like an aggressive 4-hour closure above 9,900 to very likely propel that next move, I would also look at just even taking out the 4th of June's high, which is right under 9,900 at 98.88. If Bitcoin even just traded back above that high, I would look at that as very likely to propel that next drive of continuation. Now, of course, as long as Bitcoin's caught between this blue box and even this short-term horizontal right here at about 94.50, the same area that we've kind of had for the last for the last week or so, kind of slowly but moving it up at about $50 at a time. We don't have anything resembling resolution. And while the bulls do have the balls in their court, as they are very close to getting that short-term resolution, which can lead on into long-term resolution to the upside, I would not front run any decisions within this region right here. This is the complete fuckboy range. Bitcoin can very easily spike up and spike down from here, and I don't really see much of an edge to front run a decision by about $200 or maybe $300 to the downside at this point if you are going to be bearishly minded. For right now, it is looking like short-term momentum is turning back up to the upside. Looking at 4-hour Stokes right here, we do see it's going to be reaching back into the bullish control zone, and more importantly, nice and erect, and it will stay erect as long as it has the blue pill, which is Bitcoin above 94.71. That's also an interesting number because that's actually the last spike low that we saw yesterday, by the way. If we go down to the 3-hour, we do see the same sort of thing coming from the same sort of area. We also do have kind of a nasty trend line here as well, but it would imply a test of this trend line at the critical zone at the very least. 3-hour Joule going to be giving you a soft... I don't take those signals, but the fucking the Joule Cavaliers, I'll call them, they do, and fair enough. It's actually working out. Wouldn't expect it to always work out though. In momentum on the 3-hour will stay to the upside as long as Bitcoin price actually above 9,500. Again, above that last prior 4-hour low. That Bitcoin just set in yesterday. Looking at a 2-hour, same thing as well, although getting a little bit tired here. We'll cross to the downside if Bitcoin fails to close this next 2-hour delta above 97.30-ish region. So that's going to be the short-term range now, and hourly showing 97.72 spot 30 for downside as well. So it's looking like very short-term. Bitcoin probably does play back to like quite literally the median of this range if we are looking at it on a 4-hour schedule from the blue box to this horizontal right here. But it does not necessarily imply a breakdown below that. The 3-hour and 4-hour momentum stay up as long as Bitcoin essentially creating another higher low or just operating off of that last higher low. So this is, once again, a very easy way to kind of be moving it up here. And once again, we can just kind of move it up to 9,500. So we've seen it go all the way from 93 to 93.50, 94, 94.50, and then now 9,500, just moving up with each and every higher low that passes by on these lower term time frames. And I do believe that gets it pretty damn well. So the way that I look at this now after Bitcoin tested it yesterday is that if Bitcoin does break below 9,500, not 94.50 anymore, but 9,500 on a 4-hour delta closure, I would look for extension at the very least, very, 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 very likely down below 9,000 again, somewhere around the 236 fib from the last high to the last low of this last run, which would also be synonymous with this rising trend line right here, which I think is still very much possible that Bitcoin could do. I mean, it could still play out this ascending triangle and test this trend line one more time and just frustrate the shit out of people who want to get really, really bullish right here, because it is closer to breaking, but the confirmations not being had is a great way to drag people into bad positions and then flip it around them on the other way, get them to cover because people are typically very over leveraged. And then, assuming that this area does hold, well, I'd still be looking at this as an ascending triangle. It's not until Bitcoin really breaks below this prior low right here, which is about a little bit above 8,700, where we actually do start to really break down this structure. It starts to look a lot more like distribution, and then we can start to target a move equally as diabolical to the downside, of which I have a measure move pointed down towards about 7,500 right here. Also not 0.5 Fibonacci retracement, which is, good confluence there. I would be looking for bounces along the 382 at 8,100. Also a nice horizontal coming in from that massive liquid zone before before a massive breakdown and a massive breakout to the upside. So very good historical area. Same thing for this guy right here at the 0.5. And then personally speaking, I do think that 7,500 probably could bottom it, but overall, if things were to break down, I'd really be looking at the 618 down around 6,900 and then rejudge from there. Very likely comes alongside a move down in the traditional markets as well. But that's also why I'm not necessarily bearish here. Nasdaq closing on new highs last week, making new all-time highs to start off this new week right here. Yes, I know a lot of people think that something at all-time highs just is destined to go down. Yeah, I mean, at some point, yes, but the trend is your friend until the end of the trend, and that's what people have been saying ever since basically like 2002, or sorry, maybe not 2002, but 2009, 2010 was the last major down here. So overall, one of the things that my mentor taught me about something that's making new all-time highs is that it continues to make new all-time highs until acted upon by an outside force, basically meaning don't expect the the fucking trend to change until something, until you get like actual proof of that. And we don't have anything resembling that at all in the weekly. And as I've been saying ever since late March, I think it was, I think the stock market's very likely bottomed. I think that the counter trade to the general crowd was looking at this area right here while everyone was in mass hysteria. Not everyone, but most people were in mass hysteria, and all news outlets were saying how this is the worst depression ever and things are never going to be the same, and blah, 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 blah. I mean, that was a time to actually be a counter trader. And for all the people who, incessantly say, I'm bullish because everyone's bearish, and vice versa, just insane shit like that, they were all on the same fucking side. And you know what? It could be that the coronavirus comes back again and we get some sort of a second wave. But overall, these things get priced in pretty damn well, because realistically, coronavirus isn't going to last, or I'd imagine, at least due to human ingenuity, that it's not going to be a forever thing. We're probably going to come up with a vaccine, or it runs its course, or whatever that looks like, and then we'll probably get another one, sometime down the road, as that just seems to be what's normal for the world. But overall, the market seems to think that that's well, in some ways good for the techs, especially because it's kind of like driving technological adoption now, isn't it? We're kind of moving from, of course, the industrial age into the information age. And who's going to be a major beneficiary of that? Well, the techs. So Nasdaq's a very good one to be looking at, and making new all-time highs to start off this week is a pretty damn good start. But let's go down to the lower term timeframes and see, is there anything resembling or anything suggesting that we may have a massive pullback? And I do think at some point this thing will pull back, whether it's to like 9,000 or 8,500. I wouldn't be looking for a pullback at all whatsoever, especially as long as we have a fucking uptrend on a daily. I mean, for fuck's sake, as long as this thing's above the daily 21 exponential moving average, I have no reason at all whatsoever to be bearish on this. That does mean it has a pretty massive range here and come all the way back down to like 9,450, 9,500. I don't have strong opinions on the short-term timeframes here. Like I said, there will be ebbs and flows, of course, but overall, I'm bullish on this as long as those conditions are met. And if it did go back below that level, like 94, 9,500, then yes, I'd look for at the very least extension down to 9,000, potential bottom right there. And then if that fails, 8,500 extension and potential bottom right there as well. But that bodes well for Bitcoin, as we do see that Bitcoin and traditional markets have been correlated with each other for the last 10 years, ever since the inception of Bitcoin. So, a strong, a rising tide lifts all ships. A strong Nasdaq lifts pretty much everywhere in the world. Maybe to lesser degrees on some assets other than, in comparison to others. But we can now judge Bitcoin's relative strength because we expect Bitcoin to break to the upside here, granted the strength in traditional markets. It's going to allow the laggards to rally up more. Same thing with E-mini futures for SPY, making a damn good move here, not making new all-time highs. So it's kind of it's kind of following itself as well. Realistically, though, just to get this out of the way, realistically, the reason why the Nasdaq's doing so fucking well is because Microsoft and Apple, two goddamn stocks, nothing else. Not really much else, to be fair. But looking at SPY right here, SPY futures, closing on a new high above this massive meltdown that we saw in early March. That's a damn big deal. Or damn big deal. Why can't I speak today? I don't know. I'm trying some new coffee out, so maybe it's fucking up my brains, and maybe they're already too fucked up. Anyways, if it does want to come back and fill like 3113 again, that area that we're looking at last week, I think that would be completely fine, completely natural, but that would be mostly an opportunity before another try higher. Next area that I'd be looking towards about 325 region, 326 region. Obviously, gap still present at 333.5, 333.7 region. So those are areas of interest to the upside here. But this is a melting up phase. This is climbing the wall of worry, and now it's not just climbing the wall of worry. It's like taking the elevator up the wall of worry. It looks like same sort of moving average cross is going on here as we see on Bitcoin, by the way. And this is just looking like an absolute runaway from the lows, which is beautiful as well. So really, really liking what traditional markets are doing right now. And I don't really have any reason to be bearish on this thing as long as it's above 3,000. 300 for SPY itself. If it did lose 313 to the downside, yes, I do think that we test officially 300. But 300 is kind of like the gatekeeper for keeping this one, in the long-term macro up. And if things did break to the downside from there, I'd probably look for another test back down to 285 region. But for right now, upside is the name of the game. Maybe like a very short-term downside here. It is looking a little bit frothy in the short term. Same thing with Nasdaq as well. Wouldn't mind it to come back and fill last week's open, and then maybe not last week's open, but maybe back down to last week's major resistance at 313, and then try for some continuation on top of that. Germany looking pretty damn good as well, up 3.36%. Or is this one? Yeah. Okay. Yes. No. It's closed right now. Sorry. Apologies for that. Germany's not even open right now. Japan's open though, and Japan's gapping up higher, looking good. Looks to me like it wants to reach towards 23,500-ish region. And overall, world markets are looking more or less fine. Even Nifty's up as well. Definitely a laggard here. Definitely not strong in the general context of the world markets, but with everything else rallying, this thing probably reaches back up towards 10,800. 10,900 region and beyond. The world market likes to move together. Again, a rising tide lifts all ships. I don't say this stuff as like feel good shit. I say this stuff because I truly believe it, and it's true if you understand. If you understand just anything about the world, really, like we all kind of affect each other on some level, and you just can't nail down like how intense that rippling of effects can be. Anyways, that's another fucking talk for another time. There's your positive message of the day. Just everyone love everyone. There you go. It's good, man. And what movie is that from? If you know, I actually forgot which one it is. So if you could let me know, then that'd be great. Anyways, let's go check out Eurodollar. I'm curious what that one's doing. Kind of at weekly resistance here. Did close on a new weekly high, so I do think that is going to give another try to the upside here. Want to see a takeout of last week's wick at 113.8 in order to get some more continuation. I do think that we are looking at a long-term reversal here, though, or at least, well, God, the bi-monthly is so ugly, so fucking ugly. The monthly does look good for at least a try on this reversal. Any close above 112, and I'd give it a chance to at least maybe extend over to 120. That the problem is with that is that it's not a that's a monthly reversal, but it's not like a macro reversal. We'd still be dealing with this downtrend over here, and it's just constructing one massive long-term eternity of lower highs, and maybe even a long-term descending triangle as well, which is fucking goddamn, man. Oh, I need to take my monies out of euros. Bad deal. Anyways, looking at Bitcoin, holy shit, man, I just got way sidetracked there. But going back over to look at Bitcoin. Well, I mean, there's really not too much else to update other than like the short-term time frames. Looking at the 12-hour, I really like the last 12-hour close. It looks to me like it is going to give another try to the upside here. Actually, let's go to our other chart. There we go. It looks like it is going to give another try to the upside here. In fact, if 12-hour Stokes are curling around, oh my God, they are curling around, and they are about to reject the bearish control zone and will confirm a rejection of the bearish control zone. Even more importantly, if this next 12-hour dildo closes above 9,600. By the way, that would also imply the next 4-hour and 3-hour to close above there as well. Or sorry, note the next one after this next closing one, which they all close at the same time, and then we'll see momentum oscillators on all those time frames, short-term time frames and higher-term time frames, and medium-term time frames turn up all in unison. I look at that as more or less good, and give Bitcoin at the very least another decent shot at taking out that 9,900-ish area to the upside. Curious what the daily looks like as well. Yeah, daily momentum oscillators will actually confirm a twist back up to the upside here. Those little snaky motherfuckers are giving a little bit of a fake out, or hinting at a little bit of a fake out. Needs to close a daily above essentially 9,700. So here's the thing, as I've been saying, as long as the daily is above all major moving averages, as long as it has a golden cross, as long as it is in an uptrend, I can't be bearish on anything that looks like that ever. Same thing if it was for the downside. That's not to say that it can't happen. It's just until it happens, I don't change around the view from this time frame's perspective. And in this case right here, higher low, higher low, higher low, higher high, and above all major moving averages, momentum oscillator is turning back up. Daily RSI is daily RSI can go either way here. Daily Joule is the only thing that really makes me consider, what the fuck, man? If the daily Joule gets, I as I've been saying for the last 2 years, anytime that I've disagreed with the Joule, I've been wrong. Joule's been right. really do think that this time Jewel's gonna be wrong. I'm gonna be right. Fuck the Jewel. Fuck you, Jewel. Go fuck yourself, Jewel. I want to see some girthy green dildos in my face at your expense. I truly do believe that right here. Again though, I would not expect the daily Jewel signal to play out at all whatsoever, as long as we are above the short-term range. Short-term range, again, once again being brought in up to 9,500 from 9,450-ish yesterday, and that's also going to be in line with the 21 exponential number. So as long as we're above there, I do not look for that to play out at all. Yes, there was a decent move down from there. If you're looking at this 9,900 take to the last low that we saw at 94, $500 move. Would I expect more off of a daily Jewel sell signal that's not super perfect but pretty damn good here? Yes, I would, but overall, I just don't think there's been plenty of chances to get it down there. I believe that we probably would have seen it yesterday. Instead, it just put in another higher low on lower term time frames. So to me, as long as it's carrying out that structure, it just can't I just can't get on the side of that, and I also can't speak. So feel free to regale me in the comments. Overall, let's go check out 4-hour historical volatility percentile. That's the one that we've been kind of looking at to judge this next move. And what do you know? It's starting to expand right now from about a 0 read that we saw yesterday on Sunday and Saturday. Again, anytime that we get down to single digits, that's your $500 plus moves at the very least. 26th of March was the last read that we saw right there before this move from 7,000 down to 5,800. So that's more than $1,000 move. Time after that was right here, going from 75 to 9,000. Time before that was back on over here, going all the way from 10,000 down to 8,000. I mean, these are typically pretty impressive moves. So Bitcoin's very much wound up here, and this is why I'm saying it's very important to be, at least for myself, paying attention to Bitcoin right now. Early on in this week, as we do have a historical volatility percentile read that is now expanding, and you can see that the moving average on this is really getting a massively positive slope. So I want to see another spike up, probably sometime around that traditional markets open at 9:30 a.m. Eastern time today, and that would kind of be in line with what we're seeing right now. So I also was looking at a contraction phase coming in on the hourly. Yes, we did see that, and actually that came to fruition on that next higher low that we set in at 94.50-ish region. So you can see right there. So that's actually playing out right now. I'd look for this to contract a little bit and then perhaps line up with another phase, another phase continuation around the time that traditional markets open. 12-hour, very, very low right now. So this one's wound up as well in the single digits. So we are very likely to look at a pretty big move this week, I do believe. Even the daily, I think, is contracted pretty damn nicely here. Pretty damn orderly, not super orderly, but you can see that it is still maintaining the negative slope on the moving average. So that would suggest that the greater range, this speaking to the macro right here, is not going to be resolved for a little bit more time. But the macro range is not the same thing as the long-term range. The long-term range, hey, get off there, you fuck. The long-term range is that 9,900-ish level, which then we can talk about 10.5, macro range 11,500, of which this would probably suggest somewhere in like end of July, perhaps. And this could also go to the downside as well, but I would look for that to that would be the scenario where we actually break like below 8,700 and create and start to really fuck things up, I suppose you could say. So yeah, probably don't have to talk about that for a little bit of time, but the long-term range right here is so damn close. So that is going to align with the lower term time frames actually a little bit better. If you're looking at something like historical volatility percentile, it's just the way that they're designed. Gonna operate a little bit better in that vein. Looking at the 2-day, again, above all major moving averages, above the 200 simple and the 21, which actually recently got a positive cross or a bullish cross. Golden cross right here on the 55 and 200 and retested right up. I mean, this is textbook. This is fucking textbook. And higher lows and along the way. So not necessarily higher highs though, but constructive nonetheless. So again, as long as we're writing the structure, I just don't see any real reason to get bearish on this. Looking at the 3-day as well, looks to me like a higher low perhaps in the making, and we can actually even just use the last 3-day low as a nice natural pivot point on the market. It's a little bit below 9,400 at 9,370 on GDAX here, but I do believe that would very likely get it for the short-term range as well. So there's two ways to get the downside for the short-term range, at least in my opinion. 4-hour or 2-hour dildo closure below 9,500. That's I'd feel the most confident with that way, or just taking out yesterday's low essentially at 9,370 or whatever the wick is on your exchange of preference. This one being, yeah, GDX again. Looking at momentum oscillators from these time frames as well, we are going to see 3-day Stokes actually kind of crumble here, so that is a little bit concerning as well. We do see reverse Stoke indicator will actually cross and back up to the upside on the next closure above 9,700, which we don't get until like Wednesday. Yeah, Wednesday at 8 p.m. Eastern time. 2 days can actually cross back up, confirmed as of yesterday or maybe today. Will remain to the upside on 2-day Stokes as long as Bitcoin price action is above 9,750. So I really like that as even like a short-term pivot to the upside. Again, the short-term range to the upside is like, it's such tight margins, because what are you going to really be looking at 9,900 after that? But then things can really move fast. So it is interesting, to be fair. But for me, not enough meat on the bones. I'd rather be looking at the higher term timeframes as it is right now. Do want to check in on CME's weekly, just because we were following that nice long-term falling wedge formation, which was broken after a year of consolidation a few weeks ago, retested I think a couple weeks ago right here. So far, the reaction has been very good. More importantly, with this week, we have actually confirmed the exponential above the breakout point. That should add efficacy to this breakout, and if it is going to play out, we actually very likely should see it play out this week at the very least, latest next week. This is time. Time is included in this one. Needs to make a higher high above this 60 read right here, and then yes, I'd look for a move. Historically speaking, it looks like the low 70s is kind of where it likes to settle into, although you can't really make a measure move on something like this. But for what it's worth, CME chart overall looks actually really good here. All major moving averages are in bullish posturing. All major moving averages have positive slope. All major moving averages have lower periods trading above higher periods, and it looks good, man. So to me, this is a bullish reaccumulation formation. Major moving averages are looking good. Momentum moving averages are starting to look pretty damn good again, and Bitcoin's right there. It just needs to do it. Just needs to go to its home like Happy Gilmore. Make sure. Okay, maybe recording this video a little bit too long now. Didn't even check out gold. Should I look at gold really quick? Yeah, so we're getting that bounce up that we spoke about, but I do think that this one has more downside to go this week, probably 1650, maybe 1630-ish region, and that'll be looking for bounces around there. But looking definitely short term, maybe even medium term toppy. Long term though, I think still fine, but for now, probably be looking at some short-term downside. Anyways, back onto Bitcoin. Let's wrap this bitch up. Or actually, let's look at. I forgot to show you this, my friends. All right, from the makers of Bali's incredible lab, Bali and Pig, I should say. I should actually show you this down here. I've been playing around with this for a fucking long time now, and I'm just going to be speaking about it for the first time now in on stream. This is Bali's momentum oscillator, momentum's oscillator, Bali's mom, if you want to call it that. And what do we see right here? We see that the slope on the mom oscillator is actually switching back up to the upside. No divergence to really be spoken about here, but more importantly, we do see a nice and orderly higher lows coming off this all the way from September 2019, getting more aggressive as time goes on too, and anytime that the slope does switch around in it, it does seem to work pretty damn well. Now, I've not had very good luck looking at divergences with this oscillator. I think that there's better tools for that, but I do think that for slope, it is pretty damn good. It does seem to get things relatively well, better than the other tools that I have. So I actually would probably like to look at a derivative of this and then see if there's something with that to get a little more deeper into it. But it does, it does kind of add efficacy onto this current bullish bias here, at least in the short term. Bulls do kind of have the balls in their court. Okay, so let's go look at probabilities. So the ranges, the ranges from yesterday to today are really the same. I'll use 9,500 to the downside just to give the bears something here, because they do deserve something. Yes, as we've been speaking about. So as we've been speaking about for the last few days, the bears had the ball in their court, right? As the probabilities were massively in their favor, and then I said, if they fail to really take advantage in these next couple of days, the probabilities will naturally shift back into parity and then into bulls' favor, and that's actually what we're seeing right now. In fact, they're pretty much equal right here, just a small edge to the below target probability. But because both of these are actually above 29%, both of them are very likely to happen, to be fair. I mean, that's very, very high. We can expect that the short-term range at the very least is going to be, at the very least, tested, probably broken on this next daily closure, maybe at most a couple days. Again, it doesn't really imply that, but the probabilities are so high that it's likely. Looking at the 12-hour even, probabilities are going to be above 21% for both of them, 22% to the upside. So technically the 12-hour showing on the next 12-hour delta closure, bulls have a little bit more likelihood here, and this is using 10,000. So 10,000 was like my much more conservative way of doing this. I could just as easily use 9,900, and I think that 9,900 probably does do it, because that's going to have all of the downstream effects of those momentum oscillators turning back up, plus major break of historical area. Well, maybe not historical area, but at least the high term time frame range right now. And what do we see here? 32.21% versus 21.17%, and that's 9,500 to the downside. So 9,500 to the downside does get the short term downside, which is going to that's a $600, maybe even $800 move with potential to get another 1,000 to 1,500 on top of that, if things were to really accelerate. But realistically, that's short-term range versus kind of like a long-term range for the upside. So again, bulls really going to start to gear the odds in their favor with within the next day or two. So it is the balls is in the bulls' courts. So I actually do think that if bulls are going to initiate the upside, it happens today, tomorrow, maybe at the very latest Wednesday. Things are just too wound up here, and if there's one thing that you can count on with historical volatility percentile is that when it gets low, it will expand. It will expand by definition. And I do believe that it has quite a bit of power here. So with all of that said, again, just putting on nice little tools right here, 9,500 to the downside. I would be looking for extension all the way to 88, 8,900 region, fill this area right here, probably bounce there. And then if the bounce fails and this breaks, then we can talk about, much further south targets, well below 8,000, probably down to 7,000-ish region. By the same token, as long as Bitcoin's just putting in higher lows right here, balls in the bulls court, still need to see a closure above this area right here. Again, 9,900 aggressively, 10,000 conservatively. I'd look for extension to 10.5. That would initiate the next measure move though to 11,000 prospectively speaking. So perhaps if we do make a new high over 10.5, I would be looking for extension to 11,500. That's where the macro battle gets fought, which is where things get quite interesting once again. So I think this is a good point for me to kind of leave off on. I would like to wish you well once again. Take care, and until next time.